Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. And I'd say today has been a little bit strange, a little odd in the sense that some very unlikely developments have occurred. I mean, on one side you have Xbox that just had their biggest week ever since launch in a region that they're really not all that well known for, and they really do seem to just be accelerating the further we get into this generation. They have some real momentum right now. But then you also have Valve, and did they possibly just learn how to count to 3? I mean, I never thought they'd actually figure it out, but by all indications, they might have went to school after all. Maybe they've been watching Sesame Street or something like that. Then you have Nintendo, and there's some juicy Gamecube rumors floating around right now. I mean, maybe I'm just dreaming all of this, but if I am, well, don't wake me up. This is a good dream, and of course, I'll tell you all about that today. To make my dream even better though, go ahead and hit those buttons below, like, subscribe, and of course hit that bell notification so I can sleep even more comfortably. With that said though, let's just go and jump right into the news, and here's a game that we haven't talked about for a while, CyberPunk 2077. Now, once upon a time, every time we used to talk about this game, it was always bad news. I mean, the problems with Cyberpunk have been well documented, as it never really met those lofty expectations that the studio set for it. But even then, CD Projekt Red has yet to wane, as they've made it a mission to fix those problems and really just kind of make it into the game that they originally promised. Well, it sounds like they might be one step closer to that goal, as they just announced a surprise Cyberpunk livestream set for September 6th. Yeah, this is yet another event set for the month of September. It's really just going to be a fun month overall. But they did note that this livestream will include the upcoming Netflix Cyberpunk anime titled Edgerunners, and then what's to come next for Cyberpunk 2077. Now, if I were to guess as to what they're alluding to here, I imagine it will probably be the first look at its upcoming expansion. In fact, hundreds of lines of dialogue from its first expansion reportedly leaked out just earlier this year. So, I mean, with that going around, I imagine that's probably what we're going to see here. And hey, I mean, if it turns out to be good, maybe they can just kind of renew interest in Cyberpunk once again. You know, I don't think that this is necessarily a bad game, per se. It has a bad reputation, as it had a ton of issues at launch. But if they fixed that stuff up, and if this expansion turns out to be good, maybe it'll bring some fans back. Let me know though, would you be interested in jumping back in, or have you moved on by this point? Let me know. Moving on though, let's talk about a big Nintendo rumor that's floating around right now, and that is that they're looking to make a big GameCube push for the Nintendo Switch. Now, I do want to emphasize that this is just a rumor currently. There's no guarantee on any of this, so just kind of take that as you will. But according to several insiders online, they are suggesting that Nintendo's not only looking to bring back Zelda Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, as previous rumors already suggest, but they're also developing several others. This was first brought up by Liam Robertson, who tweeted out, "We're going to do a lot of winning this month, GameCube Nation." This then prompted Direct Feed Games to respond, which, you know, this is an account by Nate Drake, and he replied, "From zero to hero, just like that." Now, this could be a hint of something like F-Zero GX for the Nintendo Switch, though nothing outright is necessarily being specifically named here, or at least until Emily Rogers over on Family Boards fueled the fire a lot more. She said, and I quote, "No, it's true. Nintendo is going crazy with remasters and remakes. Most of the remasters mentioned in this thread are either in development or under serious consideration at Nintendo." Now, if you look through the Family Board thread, several GameCube games were named here, such as Pikmin, you have Paper Mario A Thousand Year Door, F-Zero GX, obviously the Zelda games, Metroid Prime, among others. Now, just from that small list of games, that's a lot of great and beloved games. And according to Emily Rogers, a lot of those games are either in development or under considerations, which that would be absolutely amazing if true. Now, I said this a few days ago, but one of the reasons that I would like to see GameCube ports on the Nintendo Switch is because it allows me to play these great games on a handheld console. But it's not just that, because there's also this problem that a lot of these games are not necessarily easily accessible outside of questionable means. Now, you can kind of go down that direction if you want, but I mean, if you want to buy a GameCube and try to buy these games secondhand, Well, if you go down that route, I mean, the prices for a lot of these games are just ridiculous by this point. So by bringing them back to the Nintendo Switch, that could expose them to just so many more people without them having to spend a fortune. All at the same time, though, I do want to spread caution around this rumor. I do actually have a hard time believing Emily Rogers anymore, as she tends to have a bit of a shaky track record. So just kind of take all of this as you will, but I mean, I do hope this does turn out to be true. I would love it personally. If it does happen, though, let me know which GameCube ports you'd like to see most. Now, we also got some Famitsu numbers ending in the week of August 28th, revealing some pretty strong results over in Japan, specifically for the Xbox Series. Now, I'll kind of get into that here in just a second, but first, let's take a look at the total results for the week over in Japan. No big surprise, the Switch continues to dominate the charts with 113,000 units sold between the OLED, the Switch Lite, and then the standard Switch. It really is just complete Nintendo domination over there anymore, but PlayStation also had a pretty good week as well. They sold 25,000 units, and then just below that you have the Xbox Series, which sold 16,700 units. Now, all three platforms were up compared to the previous week, which is great to see, but the Xbox Series specifically really stands out here. Now, you might kind of wonder why, considering it actually sold less than the other two. But context is very important here. Japan typically is a region that Xbox has historically struggled in, but here, the Xbox Series is performing very well. And in fact, this was actually their best week since the launch of the Xbox Series, where it sold 20.5 thousand units. Now, that is particularly very interesting because you're actually seeing the Xbox Series accelerate in growth in Japan instead of slowing down. There for a while, there were some questions out there on whether or not the Xbox Series could actually maintain its initial success in Japan for the long run, or if that was just kind of a temporary thing. But here, I think this does kind of answer some of those questions. I mean, the Xbox Series has already outsold the Xbox One lifetime, which sold around 110,000 units. Well, in less than 2 years, the Xbox Series has almost tripled. Yes, tripled that number at 318,000 units sold. That is an astounding, just an incredible turnaround for Xbox. But what's important here is that it appears that's not just by accident. They, without a doubt, do seem to have more mindshare in Japan, and based on their allocation here, I think this just speaks volumes to Xbox's recognition of that. As you can see here, they're increasing their Xbox Series allocation in Japan, and they're being heavily rewarded for that. In fact, John Welfare on Twitter posted a great example of what I'm trying to say here. He pointed out that in the first 47 weeks of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series, the PlayStation 5 sold 1,085,000 units in Japan, while the Xbox Series only sold 99,000 units. Now, 99,000 units, while that doesn't sound very good, that's actually pretty good compared to the Xbox One. But what's interesting here, though, is that during the next 47 weeks, the PlayStation 5 slowed down to 806,000 units, while the Xbox Series, well, again, it actually accelerated to 219,000 units. So what that means is that Xbox absolutely is taking Japan more serious now, and they're pushing more consoles into that region specifically. See, it's all about allocation right now, and you are starting to see a bigger focus on Japan from Xbox. And really, as long as they continue to sell as well as they are, they could actually increase the allocation even further, which, I mean, honestly, I think that would be very beneficial for them, not just for Microsoft, but also for fans. Now, this is something that we have talked about in the past, but the reason this is all very important for fans is because the better Xbox does in Japan, that in return means Japanese developers will support Xbox even more. I mean, we're already kind of seeing that to a degree with games like Danganronpa. You have Street Fighter 6, that's coming out next year, Nier Automata, you have Yakuza, and even Atlas, out of all companies, is now supporting Xbox with games like Soul Hackers 2 and then Persona. But there are still a lot of Japanese games out there that unfortunately do skip out on Xbox. I mean, Falcom, as an example, I mean, they seemingly don't even consider Xbox a console. So there's still absolutely work that needs to be done in that region. But with improvements like this, that could change in the foreseeable future. Even then, though, this is still a dramatic improvement, and that's why I kind of wanted to highlight it today, and I think that they could potentially sell 1 million plus units over in Japan lifetime if they continue into this direction. I guess we'll kind of see about all that, but either way, big congrats on their just big turnaround this generation over in Japan. Now, speaking of Japan, though, we did actually get some good news for Live Alive HD. There was a bit of a troubling development last month when the July NPD results revealed it was not one of the top 20 best-selling games in the United States that month, despite it being a new game. However, we got a very welcome update today as its director during a live stream officially announced that Live Alive HD has surpassed 500,000 units sold across both digital and physical units sold. So this is very good news for a multitude of reasons. This is one of those HD 2D remakes, and with yet another successful release, this will prompt Square Enix to do even more games like this. I know I like these type of games personally, and with Square Enix's huge catalog of 90s JRPGs, they really do just have a treasure trove of games that they can work with. I know a lot of people, as an example, would just love to see Chrono Trigger get that type of treatment, but even more so, with Live Alive HD having this type of success, it also justified bringing back a more forgotten game that was often overlooked. I mean, the original game didn't even originally release in the West. So, yeah, big congrats to Square Enix here, the developers that worked on it, and also, of course, the fans who enjoyed these style of games. Now that there is always kind of the thing though, isn't it? Our enjoyment for specific games. And well, I don't think that it's really any type of big secret that fans have typically loved, and I mean loved, Valve-developed games. I mean, Valve is behind some of the most beloved franchises ever made. They've made games like Counter-Strike, you have Dota, you have the Portal series, I love that series, then you have Half-Life, there's Left 4 Dead, and yeah, you get the point. They don't just make good games, but in reality, they made some of the best games ever made, simply put. Which I'd say that makes things even more baffling or really even frustrating for fans. Because over the years, Valve they just kind of stopped making games as they put more focus on their Steam storefront and things like hardware. Now, every once in a while, they'll kind of come out with something like Half-Life Alyx, which once again proved just how good they are at making games. I mean, that was an absolute excellent game. But then, just like that, they fell back into the shadows once again, just kind of lurking. Well, that might actually be changing sometime here soon, or at least according to Valve's product designer, Greg Coomer. So in a recent interview with Famitsu, he answered some very intriguing questions that will certainly catch fans' attention. I know it did me, but let's just go and check out what he had to say. For those wondering on whether or not Valve is working on any games at all, Greg did respond by saying this. We're not stopping making games at all. Valve has a lot of games in development. We will continue to release games. Game development is very important to Valve. I don't know the exact numbers, but the percentage of employees involved in game development is high. A lot of people are involved. So, there you have it. From the way he makes it sound here, not only are they working on new games, but he actually confirms they are working on a lot of new games. Though obviously, and here's the million-dollar question that's on everybody's mind, what about their beloved franchises like Half-Life? Well, he was asked about whether or not Half-Life is in development specifically, and check his answer out. The short answer is yes. There's more to say about the Half-Life world. Alyx is a sign that Valve has more to say about the world. Now, on one side, he's not necessarily flat out saying that Half-Life 3 is in development, but by all indications here, it does appear at the very least that he's suggesting that Valve is indeed working on something Half-Life related. Now, whether that's a spin-off, another virtual reality game, or a more traditional style of game, well, that all kind of remains to be seen. But if his words are to be believed, then yes, more Half-Life is coming. Now, all at the same time, I've still seen a lot of skepticism over this remark, with various fans saying that, they'll just kind of believe it when they see it. And okay, I can honestly understand that mentality just because, this is Valve that we're talking about here, and, they have canceled games throughout the years, and until something becomes absolutely official, again, especially with Valve, a dose of skepticism it's probably healthy. Even then, though, this is still a very good sign for the future of the Half-Life series. And really, for that matter, he did also mention my favorite Valve franchise being Portal. While his remark on future Portal games were not as promising, he does express interest in the return of Portal. He did say that he'd like a new Portal game in the future, and the world deserves to be further explored. So to me, that kind of sounds like maybe a new Portal game isn't necessarily in development right now, but that could possibly change in the future. Still, at the least, there does look to be an increasingly good chance for a new Half-Life game sooner rather than later. Let's go and take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all, do you prefer the newer RPG Assassin's Creed games, or do you prefer the original classic formula? And as you can see here, most of you all actually do prefer that classic formula, with 49% of you voting for classic Assassin's Creed, while 28% of you voted for RPG Assassin's Creed. Then 17% of you all just don't really care about this franchise, and that's perfectly okay. You don't have to. But yes, it looks like a lot of you all are going to be very happy, as reportedly, Assassin's Creed Mirage is actually going to be taking the Assassin's Creed franchise back to its roots. So yeah, a lot of you all will probably be pretty happy about that. And I do understand where y'all are coming from here. See, to me, Assassin's Creed, when it originally came out, it was about being, you know, an assassin. And it feels like in some of the newer games, they kind of lost focus on that. It really doesn't feel like you're much of an assassin at all. And, you know, with some of the newer games, they also, I would say, feel a little bloated even. And I think the RPG elements kind of plays to that a little bit. Now, I'm not saying that the newer games are bad. I'm not saying that by any stretch of the means. But I'd say for myself, I am with you all. I do prefer the classic games. I don't really think every game needs to be like 50 hours long. And also, you know, I want to feel more like an assassin. That's kind of one of the reasons that those games felt so special. I'd say to this day, my favorite still remains Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. But yeah, I guess we'll just have to kind of see how Assassin's Creed Mirage plays out and see if it ends up turning out to be a success or not. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode. But if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.